Hello everyone, this is Novus Aethys. Welcome to my first tutorial on Thrones and Liberty. Um, this is basically a guide on Invocator builds. It's going to be focusing more on raids and world boss builds, I guess you can say. So I do have two builds for this, basically my raid build here and my boss build here, which uses the exact same skill set. It's just a matter of changing a few skills and mastery on each build. Nothing changes about the equipment, as you can see here. Even though I have two builds for it, it doesn't change at all. But let's go over what exactly my Invocator build is. What do I use as my primary weapon? I actually use my wand as my primary weapon, and the reason because of that is because of the wand mastery Abyssal Burst. If you're not familiar with it, Abyssal Burst basically just gives you a chance to proc a curse bomb with your auto attack. 8% chance to proc a curse bomb that does 12% of your remaining damage over time. It's essentially just your mini curse bomb, but with your auto attacks, which is super awesome. So the more attacks you get in, the more chance you have to proc your Abyssal Burst. That's why I actually use the wand over it, just basically because of attack speed. As you look compare my attack speed between my wand and my staff, it's 0.189 attacks per second essentially. And then basically my staff is 0.392, so it's like half, more than half of, or less than half of the time it takes to attack with my staff. Yes, the staff has more damage overall, but I'm basically just trying to proc that Abyssal Burst as frequently as possible. My stat distribution right now, it's mainly on Dexterity until I hit 99, Wisdom until I have 30, Strength I basically just kind of want to hit that 60 threshold. The reason why I do this 60 threshold for Strength instead of Perception is because I want it for some survivability in raids. If you haven't done like Nightmare mode or even like Dimensional Trials, it's definitely having more HP is definitely nice. I can tell you that. Just being able to survive hits is a plus on anything. But that's my stats distribution so far. I'm using Deckman's Wand, as you can see here, with the Dexterity, Attack Speed, Rune Synergy. Same thing with my staff here. Basically, the Dex Attack Speed Synergy with Diagon's Fury as the skill core. Stat reroll for the staff, heroic staff, is just the strength and dexterity. The reason why I did that is basically just for more base damage and stats. Stats is basically the king of doing that. You basically want stats to increase your base damage overall. That's essentially one of the main things you want to do for PVE. The reason, and also the reason why you're seeing that hit chance in my trait there is because that's the first trait I rolled, and I wasn't gonna spend 600 on lockdown to reroll. So I didn't do that. But anyways, moving on to the rest of the gears, I'm using Peace Spectre Overseer with the boots and the helmet, and then Void Stalker for the pants and the chest. Spectre Overseer, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. That's probably the best in slot for PvE wise, just because you get the crit damage increase 15%, and then of course you get an additional 10% if you're 5 meters, at least 5 meters away. Void Stalker, the reason I'm using this over Sacred Pose is not only because of the max damage is pretty nice. Plus 20 max damage is quite a bit if you don't realize that. But because the Void Stalker has double stats on each of these two pieces. The Void Stalker's chest and pants is best in slot for a lot of classes because it gives you double stats, which in turns for PvE gives you more stats, more base damage, and just more stats to distribute overall, which is really nice. If you take a look at the Sacred Pose set, which I do have here too, which I would have used the Sacred Pose pants and boots, there's just like one stat each, and the rest is just basically kind of your substats that you can throw on there, which isn't the best for PVE. Currently, I'm using a glove, the heroic glove. The reason why is because it's I thought it was best in slot, but I don't like that you can put fortitude. It's perception and fortitude that you can put for the stat wise. So I might be swapping this out for transcendent glove, and then putting in the heroic cloak once I find a good one. But in the meantime, I'm using the starlight for a cloak. Sorry. I think for best in slot for Invocator for raid, it might actually be the Enchanted Deep Draconic Gorget, or you can just use the regular one as well. But I think the Enchanted one is actually nicer because it gives you like 2% extra in that mana cost efficiency. If you have never really run Invocator before, you're probably going to be seeing that you're really going to be running into mana issues. Currently, I'm running for my necklace here. I'm running the max health Wisdom 3 rune synergy, and then of course you can see my runes there. I do have some boss runes, and of course for your blue slot, you're always going to be wanting to run max mana. As you can see here, I'm running max mana for all my blue slots and every single accessory and weapon. But besides that, for my orange slot, that's where I'm going to be running my my chaos rune. Sorry, lost my trail of thought there for a second. And I'm running Bracelet of the Violent Undertow for my bracelet. Again, this is, you want the attack speed with max health. The attack speed is always nice. Of course, again, blue rune is always going to be max mana. Orange rune is going to be a chaos rune if you have one. Ring is going to be cooldown perception. You can also do cooldown strength, just kind of depends on your stat distribution. I was basically just trying to hit that 40 perception for that buff duration, which is always a plus. As you can see here, I do have a chaos rune for like just about every piece of gear I have. So that's always nice. If you don't, I would sub these out for like skill mana cost efficiency or something like that. That would always be nice. Or if you have like a max mana chaos rune, that works too. And the reason why is because max mana does increase your base damage with your staff mastery. But anyways, moving on, continuing on, I'm using the Ring of Celestial Light. This is for the 2 stats, attack speed, and mana cost efficiency. Again, I'm going to kind of go over mana cost efficiency. It's very important for this build just because you're going to be burning through your mana like left and right. Stats is always king. Attack speed is always nice as well. Rune of Black Anvil, it's still one of the best rings for stat-wise. And then, of course, the heavy attack is always nice. You can definitely use the Ring of Eternal Flames if you don't have Black Anvil Ring, but Ring of Eternal Flames, you don't really need to crit too much. And I can explain those stats probably in another video if you guys want. And I'm using the earrings here, the Brilliant Regal Earring, sorry, with crit chance and fortitude. The reason why I'm using the fortitude there is because it gives me more base damage. I don't care about the max health. I'm going for just a straight up raw DPS build. As you can see here, runes are pretty standard there as well. And belts, I'm actually using the movement speed with max health. You don't typically, I would actually not recommend using this if you don't have a good chaos rune. If you don't have a good chaos rune, like some sort of max mana boss heavy attack, boss magic heavy attack, I would not recommend you using a rune synergy. I would recommend just using 3 reds and just go boss magic heavy attack on all 3. That's what I would recommend. And then we can take a look at my stats here as well. As you can see, I'm sitting at 73% cooldown reduction, 43% attack speed. Mana cost efficiency is about 22% at the moment. Buff duration is at 51%. Crit damage is 34%. Mana regen, this is not accurate, but yeah, it's about like 11 or 1200, I can't remember. And then we can look at some of my boss stats as well. As you can see, I'm stacking about 523 boss magic heavy attack. Combine that with my magic heavy attack here, it's 926, so it's not it's pretty good, I would say. Critical hit is about 1686, and plus I think, yeah, 80 here, which is a little overkill in my opinion. And I can definitely explain why I chose like these stats to you guys in another video. Right now we're just kind of going through the Invocator build and what I'm building for it. And then we can take a look at my skills as well. Skill wise, so this is my raid build right here. I'm using Touch of Despair, Decaying Touch, Ray of Disaster for curses, along for my Curse Explosion. The reason I'm using Ray of Disaster is because of Decadence Wand. If you do not have Decadence Wand, I do not recommend you using Ray of Disaster, just because a lot of people think that, hey, Ray of Disaster is a damage overtime. You're gonna get that Curse Explosion damage. No, it doesn't. It's literally because Decadence Wand applies Corrupt the Magic Circle on there, so that basically you get that damage over time. And I can show you here. If you click the little buff thing here on the dummy, use Ray of Disaster, you see that Ray of Disaster is a damage over time, and Corrupt the Magic Circle is applying as well, which is first damage over time. If you read Curse Explosion, it says here, wait for 1 second to increase the remaining burning, curse, and poison damage over time from the user by 5% for every one of the user's touches to attack. And then deals the remaining damage at once in the user's attack. But of course we're not actually removing the effects because we are using the specialization for that, which I can just go over the specialization here in a second. I'm using Serial Firebomb here. I'm using this in tandem with my Predator's Maul skill from the Abyssal Lunar Stone, and I can explain that here in a second as well. Fireball Barrage, that's just a filler ability. Hellfire Rain, that's just one of your big burst damage. Curse Explosion, that's one of your main damage for your curses. Detonating Bombardment, a lot of people don't realize what the skill is. The skill is basically Curse Bomb, but for burning damage. The more you want 10 stacks of burning damage, and it basically you use Detonated Bombardment, it does more damage. The more time you have remaining on those burning time, the more damage it does as well. So this is really strong. I've seen it do up to like 150k damage, so it's really good. High Focus, that's just for pretty self-explanatory, increasing the speed of all your skills, or cooldown speed of all your skills. Then I've used the base damage boost as well. Valerius Barrier, this is your Enchanting Time that you just changed to Valerius Barrier to increase your max damage by 92, which is really good. Chaining Bolt, I basically use this specialization for this is because it increases, or basically gives me a dot every 3 seconds, or the last 3 seconds. So basically it's almost up there, 100% uptime, almost. It's about 0.5, but with the high focus, it's 100% uptime with that, essentially, with the damage over time, sorry. Judgment Lightning, that's just a filler skill. You typically want to use these 2 skills after your fire skills, but passive-wise, we can go to passive skills here, sorry. I'm using Noble Revival, Devotion and Emptiness, Rave's Beacon, Vampiric Contract, Selfless Soul, Manaball Eruption, Forbidden Sanctuary, Flame Condensation. These are kind of almost self-explanatory, except for like maybe Selfless Soul or something like that, which you kind of see why in the masteries here, but we'll go over that in a second. Specialization wise, we are using just instant casting for Serial Firebombing. Yes, the speed is nice, but it's not needed. You don't really need it. I feel like that's just wasted spec because you don't actually need the increase in speed. Chaining Bolt, I'm using the Chaining Bolt, or sorry, Chaining, I think it's just Chain Lightning, right? Yeah, Chain Lightning. It turns to Chaining Bolt with the specialization. Basically, again, this just adds a damage over time to it. Fireball Barrage, we add the Fireball Frenzy. So basically, if the target is burned, you're doing, instead of 10 Fireball Barrage projectiles, you're doing 20 now. So that's per stack, actually. Is it per... yeah, so if basically if you have 10 burning stacks, essentially it would do 20, if I understand this correctly. But, and then of course you want the cooldown reduction. Cooldown is always king in PVE as well. Ice Spear Bombardment, it turns to Detonated Bombardment with one of your staff masteries that I'll show you in a second. But essentially this is Ice Spear Bombardment. You want to grab the Ice, or Ice Spear, I think it's just called Ice Spear, and you turn it Ice Spear Bombardment, and then you grab the damage boost as well. High Focus, you do the base damage boost, which just increases your max damage as well. You want to do Judgment Lightning. This is, or no specialization here. Hellfire Rain is just your meteor. You want to do the Hellfire Rain in the cooldown. Wand, you're just doing the increased duration for Touch of Despair. Curse Explosion, you want to grab all 3. Pretty self-explanatory. Basically, this just doesn't consume your curse. This increases your Curse Explosion damage with per stacks of Touch of Despair. This lowers your cooldown and just turns to a single target. Decaying Touch, this is Corrupted Magic Circle. You're basically just turn it into a single target curse, and then basically I'm also doing this. It basically just deals an additional base damage. Valerian's Barrier, I'm using the max damage increase, or it's Enchanting Time, or sorry, Blast Barrier, sorry. And basically this increases my max damage and increases my skill duration. Brave Disaster, I'm just doing cooldown. And I can explain why later, why I'm not using Enchanting Time with some calculation if you guys like here. But anyways, that's my skill specialization and everything there. We can take a look here at, sorry, my alarm went off, my masteries here. Essentially, I'm using Deadly Viper, Potential, Falling Flower, and Destruction Spear for my raid build. If you look at my boss build, I'm actually just using Dragon's Ascent in place of Falling Flower. Actually, it's a little bit different here too. If you look at my wand skill, it's basically I'm using Onslaught for like war boss build just because it's a fast fight. I don't really care about survivability. Typically, I actually don't even run Vampiric contract and raids just because I know I can survive. But anyways, we can go over to masteries a little bit here. For masteries, we're using Battle Spirit along with Light of Devotion for this first node here. I won't really go too much into each node just because you can kind of see what they do. Basically, I'm just going for like cooldown, mana cost efficiency, max mana, any sort of damage booster, anything that gives you extra stats too. But anyways, I'm using Battle Spirit. Basically, Battle Spirit turns Selfless Slow into Battle Spirit, and it increases your base damage on landing attack skills now instead of this extra regen that you typically get with Selfless Soul, which is really good. Light of Devotion, basically, this is increases your day effects of Devotion and Emptiness. So the reason why you're running this is if you read that second Light of Devotion, applying together with Eye of Emptiness and Water Mastery always retains the 20% improvement effect. And the improvement effect you want is the Eye of Emptiness one, actually. So, which basically, both your day and night effects for Devotion and Emptiness is going to be on 24/7 when you have both of these together. Your curses basically would do more. Your skill damage over time will increase by 36%, and your curse skill damage decreases by 10% at night. But in this case, since you're using both, you will get both the effects no matter what time of the day it is. Noble Revival gets turned into Warrior's Gambit. There's basically just the healing. Your healing decreases, but base damage is increased by 25% of Noble Revival's healing bonus. So basically, the more mana you have, the more damage you have with Warrior's Gambit. This is pretty self-explanatory. You want to increase your curse damage over time. Corrupting Hit. This is pretty essential for PVE. Your basic attack has 15% chance to apply Touch of Despair, Decaying Touch, or Time for Punishment to a monster. And then the only epic node you use in the wand is Abyssal Burst. Again, this is your auto attack that can potentially cause a curse explosion, which is really nice. And then we can go into your staff masteries here. Essentially here you're using dual cast. Sorry, let's just start with the inner nodes. You were using Mana Shockwave along with Strategic Compromise. This is basically just turns this to AoE. I mean, really, there's just no other better one that you're really using, so that's what you're using. It basically, I believe it might still potentially do additional damage with. I mean, it's just good. It's just AoE. You don't really use the Arctic Thunder, so you can it's just kind of there for filler. There's really no other good one, really, to be honest. More like you just want these nodes that are around these spots, and you're grabbing them because these nodes are. I mean, look at this: burning damage increase by 10, magic boost damage, attack speed. Those are all really good. That's basically what you want, and max mana increase too. Strategic Compromise. Basically, this just increases your skill damage boost further, which is always nice. Infernal Aftermath, you don't really care about this, but it's just there because there's nothing else really too. Heat Fusion. This turns your Ice Spirit Bombardment into Detonator Bombardment. This is a requirement for this build. You're basically, you want that Detonator Bombardment for that burning curse explosion, essentially. You don't really care for this fire wave amplifier. This is just turns your shit into AoE. You don't care about that. Dual cast, I think this is pretty good. It turns your auto attack to basically now fires 2 projectiles, but the damage is increased by 70%. So essentially, you're just randomly firing more projectiles. I think that has more chance to proc your Manaball eruption. Essentially, so that's always nice. The dual cast basically having chance to proc Manaball eruption. That's super big if you ask me. If you don't have this, you're probably kind of gimping yourself. And then you want Power Surge here as well for the epic notes. This is big. You're basically increasing your max damage per amount of max mana you have. That's why you're going those max mana runes. It's very important. It will maximize your damage. You can go up to a maximum of 30,000, which will in turn increase your damage by 4.8%. If I did my math correctly there. So that's pretty big. So basically, every 10,000 mana you have, you increase by 1.6% max damage, which is big. Mana Spring, this is really good for raid. You're just basically increasing your mana regen when your max mana goes below 30. You should almost basically never run out of mana in raids if you're running this in tandem with how your build is. If you look at my world boss build though, I don't run it because it's such for fast fights that you don't really need it. One of the difference between this and my world, actually in terms of skills, is actually the masteries. It's everything else is the same except for the mastery. I take out Selfless Soul because I don't use Selfless Soul for, or I don't use the Battle Spirit Mastery on the wand again because I'm using Vampiric Onslaught for the boss fights, and then I'm also using Dragon's Ascent instead of Falling Flower. But basically, I just throw in Mana Amp because this increases your mana by 3,360 in your max health. I don't care about the max health, but the max mana will still in terms increase your damage. Overall, this should increase your damage drastically over using Battle Spirit because Vampiric Spirit Onslaught basically converts this healing from Vampiric Contract to damage if you're not aware of that. As you can see, my runes, or sorry, my artifacts is a little bit different too. I'm using the Vindictive along with the Vicious Blade Fury. And then for my raid build, I'm using the Predator's Maul. Your Solar Stone, you can definitely switch between either or. I don't really think it really does too much of a difference, to be honest. But anyways, basically Predator's Maul is on dealing damage with a control skill. The base damage increases by 4% for 3 seconds. We can definitely kind of go over a skill rotation here. So essentially, you always want to start off with your high focus and your Valerius Barrier, and you always want to start off with Meteor. I usually kind of go with my curses and my lightning at the same time. I start stacking my Serial Firebomb. I don't stagger them right off the bat. The reason why I don't stagger them off the bat is because I'll quick detonating my bomb right off the bat. Right after that, just to get like the maximum stacks here. Again, and then after that, you basically kind of start staggering. You see that, hey, if this is going to end, you start staggering again while you're kind of using like the other skills here. The only time I kind of want to burst that Serial Firebomb is basically when I know I'm going to use my Enchanting Bombardment or my Hellfire Ring, just over the control skills as well. So the only other two controls that you have that's a trigger fire is small. So essentially, you want to keep it staggered so that you can keep up 100% uptime of your target small guy. As you can see there, I basically have like almost 50% uptime there. So meteors, I spam all my 2 fireballs, go back to the using again, stagger a little bit, stuff like that. That's kind of how you do your rotation. Everything else is considered. One thing to note is your Curse Explosion. You always want to use your Curse Explosion right after you use your curses. Typically, you're not going to be able to do all of it at once, but you at least want to be able to do it with like your couple of spare where you have maximum time and stacks there. But that's when it's going to maximize your damage. Same thing with your Detonating Bombardment. You want to use it at the top when basically you have the most burning stack time and amount of burning stacks. Essentially, that's my rotation. And one thing, oh yeah, sorry, I did almost forget, but we did. The reason why I don't use Enchanting Time is, let's see here. So basically, with my runes and masteries, I have 561 skill damage boost. If you do the math on that, that's about 561 divided by 1561. So that's about 36% skill damage boost. So you're increasing your skill damage boost by 36% essentially. If I had 220 from an Enchanting Time, that would basically give me 781 skill damage boost, right? From 781 to 561, you have about roughly 8% damage increase for your skills. Which doesn't, it's not too much of a difference, I would say, to like offset. I used to use that over detonating bombardment, and it just wasn't that big of a damage increase. Or actually, it was a less damage increase because 8% of your skills, like if I was to use any bolt, that's like that did like what 11k right off the bat there. That's about like a little over 900 damage. If you did that for like all your skill, like if I did like like that's a heavy hitter, but if I didn't heavy hitter, the chaining lightning, judgment lightning would have just done another 10k. That's like 1800 damage. If I had replaced that over using something like detonated bombardment, as you can see there, it just did 100k damage there. It's stupid. I feel like it's kind of stupid because yes, you're getting overall increased damage for all your skills, but how much are you getting increased? I feel like using another big skill like Detonating Bombardment over like Enchanting Time would actually drastically increase your damage overall. And I've tested quite a bit too, actually. I used to run a build here without basically Detonating Bombardment, essentially the same build without Detonating Bombardment, and it just did less damage overall than Detonating Bombardment. I think Detonating Bombardment just basically adds so much more potential to increasing your damage. Yeah, I've even tried like replacing Fireball Barrage and stuff like that too. It just doesn't. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work that well. Like I feel like that 220 skill damage boost. Yes, it is nice to have, but it doesn't justify losing another skill that can do big bursts of damage. Essentially, I've tried replacing like multiple skills of it, but it just doesn't work. But yeah, that's my spiel, and we can just go ahead and go into the dummy test here so you guys can see how my rotation and everything is. Have a good one, everyone.